Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we highlight the players you need to know about on game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. So this week, there is a ton of news, I'm sure as all of you guys know, but there's a lot to get through. It's going to be a very, very long podcast. This first news story, Anthony Steen out indefinitely. Dolphins starting left guard Anthony Steen had surgery on his left foot and will be out indefinitely, Hal reports of the Palm Beach Post. Miami used undrafted rookie Jesse Davis in Steen's stead on Thursday night versus Baltimore, and Hal speculates veteran Ted Larson, who started the season on IR with a torn bicep, could see time at that spot. Naturally, I think even if Anthony was healthy, that Ted would come back and eventually take over that role. We were heavily rumored to sign a guard in the offseason, and Ted Larson was the guy, mostly because we got him for cheap, and I think the organization really made it clear that they weren't willing to spend like a max money, like a big chunk of change on a guard. Is it hurting us this season? A little bit, I think. Hopefully we invest in a guard in this upcoming draft. You could see Isaac Asiata also start Sunday night versus the Oakland Raiders, but Ted Larson, I think, eventually will get the starting guard position. Next news story, Dolphins prepared to move on from Ndamukong Suh. The Dolphins have strongly denied that they will move on from Suh at season's end. As Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald reports, defensive coordinator Matt Burke recently expressed an appreciation for Suh, both as a player and a person. The Dolphins later, as an organization, completely denied this report, saying, quote, "It's 100% not true." Dolphins DT Ndamukong Suh will once again find himself in hot water with the league office after grabbing the throat of Ravens quarterback Ryan Mallett during Thursday night's blowout loss to Baltimore. And according to Jason of CBS Sports, Suh's continued bad behavior will help trigger his departure from Miami at the end of the season. Now 30, Suh was one of the most lavish free agent signings in league history when he signed a 6-year, $114 million deal with the Dolphins in March of 2015. While he has not played well for Miami, he has not helped elevate the defense. While he has played well for Miami, he has not helped elevate the defense as a whole. The team was among the league's worst at stopping the run in 2015 and 2016, and while the Dolphins are in the top 10 in that regard this season, the defense is still in the middle of the pack as a unit in terms of points allowed. Suh's signing, of course, predates the arrival of coach Adam Gase, and he is seen as a largely aloof leftover of the old regime. And while cutting him could create some salary cap difficulties, the Dolphins are willing and able to deal with those difficulties to rid themselves of a player who negatively or have begun to outweigh the negatives have begun to outweigh the positives. The full guarantees in Suh's contract have been paid out already, and the Dolphins could save $17 million in cash and $17 million in cap space by designating him a post-June 1st cut in 2018. That would create a $13 million dead cap number in 2019. The team is willing to absorb that if Suh is still on the roster by the 5th day of 2018 next league year, March. Then $8.5 million of his 2018 salary becomes guaranteed. So if Miami does release Suh, it would happen prior to that date. Very interesting stuff. I don't think, to bring up the fact that we weren't a great run stuffing unit when he got here. Obviously in 2016, that was statistically the worst defense in franchise history. We go out and we completely redo the defense. We tear it all down, we build it back up, and we did a tremendous job of that. Our defense is much improved. Some of the numbers are skewed in terms of where we rank statistically because of the offense really plaguing our defense to the point of, it's hard to play defense in the NFL when you literally play the entire game. So, some of those numbers are skewed and are a little jaded, and I think Suh is in the future plans for the Dolphins. I honestly think he's a big piece to this team. Now that we have sufficient players around him and talented players around him, because there are 10 other people on the football field, I think he is going to be a big piece to this team and the future of the franchise. I don't think we move on from him after this year. I think it's another rumor. Same thing with Jarvis Landry. I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, this was the biggest news of the week. This next news story, Dolphins trade Ajayi to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Dolphins have traded Ajayi to the Eagles. According to announcements from both teams, Miami will receive a 4th-round pick in exchange for the running back. Ajayi goes from the middling Dolphins to the first-place Eagles to help shore up their running game. Heading into the season, Ajayi was viewed as one of the league's most talented young backs, so the deal comes as an absolute shock. The Eagles are giving up very little for the 24-year-old. In light of the numbers that he put up in 2016, Ajayi is also a bargain for this year and beyond. His contract calls for $670K cap charge this year and a $760K cap charge in the following season. He does not have a 5th-year option at the end of his rookie deal, since he's a 5th-round pick, but the Eagles have plenty of time to lock him up between now and the spring of 2019 if they choose to do so. Through 7 games, Ajayi has not been quite as productive as expected. He has 465 yards off of 138 carries, good for a 3.4 yards per carry average. He also added 14 catches for 67 yards. He has yet to see the end zone either via air or ground. That's not necessarily a reflection on Ajayi, however, since Miami's offense has been anything but stable this year. The Dolphins lured Jay Cutler out of brief retirement to fill in Ryan Tannehill's shoes, but Cutler's rib injury led to Matt Moore taking over as the starter, as evidenced by Thursday night's 40-0 blowout. That doesn't make for an effective offense. In Philadelphia, Ajayi is expected to team up with LeGarrette Blount to split back duties. So far this year, Blount has been the superior back with 467 yards off of 100 carries, giving him a strong 4.7 yards per carry average. He also has found pay dirt 3 times in total. Next up for Ajayi and the Eagles is a Sunday night tilt against the Broncos. After that, Philly's newest acquisition gets a bye week before facing their rival Cowboys in Week 11. So this is we're going to talk about this more as the podcast goes on. This is obviously a blow for a lot of Dolphins fans, not just from losing a talented player like Jay, a Pro Bowler, one of the best running backs in the league in my opinion, but from an emotional standpoint. Obviously, he was a big part of the reason why we made the playoffs last year. He was our team's identity last year, and that obviously we were able to use that formula and go to the playoffs. So emotionally as well, fans are going to be upset about this because he was obviously a fan favorite. Again, one of the more electrifying players to watch in the league, and we really haven't seen a running back like him and have the year that he did in 2016 since Ricky Williams when he was in his prime. So it's an interesting trade. We're going to get into some of the reasons why. We're going to talk about this a whole lot more, so we got to keep going. But that just breaks down the initial things that happened there. This next news story, fallout from Jay Ajayi's trade. The Dolphins sent their starting running back of the past 2 years to the Eagles, and Jay Ajayi will join the team with the best record in football. The team looks to view the ball carrier differently. Looks to view the ball carrier differently. Here's the latest coming out of Miami and Philadelphia regarding his high-profile swap. Miami was planning to look for running back help this offseason regardless of an Ajayi trade. Charles Robinson of Yahoo.com tweets, Robinson writes, the team has been doing its due diligence on backs, and it looks like Miami could well pursue a new starter for 2018. Miami saw Ajayi's average just 3.4 yards per carry this season after debuting as a starter at 4.9 yards per tote, but the Dolphins handed him the ball on 138 times on their 168 rushing attempts thus far. Damian Williams, 12 carries in 2017, and Kenyon has 10, are the next men up. The Dolphins also don't think Ajayi has much longer to play before the knee problems that dogged him coming out of Boise State are going to catch up to him. Jeff Darling of ESPN.com tweets, Ajayi fell to the 5th round partially because of concerns about his knees, but he played in 15 games last season, missing one because of a disciplinary issue, and he suited up for each of the Fins' 7 2017 contests. Howie Roseman said the Eagles did the necessary medical work on Ajayi and are comfortable with his knees. Ajayi will take a physical upon arriving in Philadelphia tonight. Ajayi won't turn 25 until next summer, and much like Philadelphia's Ronald Darby trade, a key part of the deal was Ajayi's being under contract through 2018. Harry Roseman said via Zach Berman of Philadelphia.com. LeGarrette Blount, though, will remain the Eagles' starter. And then moving on to some more Dolphins news. The Dolphins believe this trade will represent an addition by subtraction effect. Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald reports Ajayi's, quote, selfish attitude contributed to him falling out of favor with the Dolphins, with Salguero reporting the running back had multiple occasions stormed out of the locker room after games due to discontent about his workload. Ajayi had four games featuring 27 plus touches, but there are others. All Dolphins losses featured fewer than 17. So Salguero reports Ajayi complained to Dolphins running backs coach Danny Barrett, but never addressed his concerns with Adam Gase. So, that I guess kind of lets you in on the locker room. So obviously this was a thing. Ajayi always had this issue, and I think all of us fans knew about it. Obviously him getting benched before the game in Seattle. So this has been going on even before he had his success. And I think the success probably, I guess gave him a bigger head. And Adam Gase obviously doesn't care how productive you've been. This is his team, and he doesn't want players that are going to complain in the locker room and storm out and act like a child, obviously, because over carries. It's very similar to the Martavis Bryant situation. So I get it. I think if the situation was made more public as it was going on, I think Dolphins fans would understand it more. But since it was kept in-house for this long, there have been hints at it that him and Adam have really never got along. I think since it's been going on privately and it finally comes out and this is the reason that we traded him, it makes a lot of sense. It is what it is. We're going to get into it some more. Let's finish up the news. Ted Larson returns to practice. Offensive lineman Ted Larson has been designated to return by the Dolphins, reports veteran NFL reporter Howard Blazer. This was an expected outcome for Larson, who is dealing with a torn bicep. As reports early as September indicated, Larson was a candidate to play again in 2017. Miami placed the starting guard Anthony Steen on injured reserve earlier today, so Larson, who is eligible to return as soon as this weekend, could be immediately inserted into the Dolphins lineup. I would expect this to happen. It makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of Dolphins fans are going to be happy that they're going to get their, one of the guards that we thought that was going to be a mainstay on the line. Obviously, our offseason additions in terms of guards were Isaac Asiata and Ted Larson. The only one that we've really seen, and well, actually both of them we haven't seen because of because of Ted's injury and Isaac's inability to be ready for NFL action. So we'll see what happens. I would expect Ted Larson to be the starter though, as he comes back. This next news story: Jay Cutler will start despite rib injury. Cutler was injured against the New York Jets when linebacker Jordan Jenkins slammed him into the ground. Moore came on as relief, sealed a 31-28 victory. The Dolphins signed quarterback David Phillips to serve as Moore's backup last week. Gase said last week Cutler was wearing rib protection when he sustained his injury, which is crazy. So yeah, that's it. Jay Cutler is going to start against the Oakland Raiders, which I'm sure none of you are surprised about. I'm excited to see. We'll get into I'm excited to see what the offense looks like without Ajayi, even though that sounds insane. And we're gonna get to that later in the video, or the podcast. Adam Gase says receiver Jarvis Landry is, quote, a huge part of the Dolphins' future, but Dolphins coach Adam Gase said Wednesday he wants wide receiver Jarvis Landry to be, quote, a huge part of the team's future, before adding one important caveat: he doesn't negotiate the contracts. Landry, who is in the final year of his rookie deal, reportedly had his name mentioned in trade rumors during the offseason, and there was speculation his name might have come up prior to Tuesday's 4 p.m. trade deadline. Gase said Wednesday he likes Landry and his other wide receivers. Adam Gase said, quote, we told him a while ago. Gase began to reference Landry, quote, I can't remember when everybody was saying that. we were trading him, and we told him a long time ago he wasn't going anywhere. Adam Gase goes on to say, "We have a vision for what we want the wide receiver room to look like, and we expect him to be a huge part of that. And however it works out down the road, that's hard for me to say because I don't negotiate the contracts." Gase followed up with favorable comments about his wide receiver trio that primarily included Landry, Kenny, and Devontae Parker, who's expected to be back this week from a 3-game absence due to an ankle injury. Gase's comments would seem to take some heat off the wide receivers as being among the group Gase complained last week it doesn't do its homework. Gase said, quote, "I like that group." Gase said of the wide receivers, quote, "I like the group that group a lot, and I think we have not only a lot of talent, we have a lot of guys that are trying to do it right and fight through the entire game." Quote, Adam said, "I think that's why we see some moments when things look really good. We've just got to find ways to improve. We've got to keep being on the details and make sure we're accountable for each other." To each other, excuse me. So yeah, this is a very interesting, very interesting article. One, it tells us that Jarvis Landry is an Adam Gase guy, and Adam Gase is going to do everything he can to keep him around. Number two, it tells us that there are 0 lineup changes to the receiver core. Obviously, Adam Gase is fine with the receivers. Ajayi not so much for many different reasons. Obviously, they didn't get along with each other. You know, I think in terms of this offense, which I think really needs a 3-down back, Ajayi is not that. He can't come in on 3rd down and be your receiving back. He can come in on 1st and 2nd down in short yardage situations and be your 3rd down back, but not on 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 6s. He can't be your 3rd down back. So I think that made it a little bit easier to let him go, and combine that with all of the issues behind the scenes and in the locker room, I think really made this deal happen. You talk about being active after Thursday night's loss. There are a lot of, the entire roster is different now that Ajayi is gone. Not only is the roster different, but the play calling is going to be different. The personnel is going to be different. Everything's going to be different with this offense. It's going to be really interesting to see how it flows without Ajayi. And, you know, I hated the trade the first time. Obviously getting only a 4th round pick for Jay is absolutely unacceptable. Obviously, Mike Tannenbaum has a great relationship with Philly, and obviously that's because of that great relationship we've been able to make deals with Philly multiple times now. Not just once, not just twice, but multiple times. And giving up a 4th round pick, or getting a 4th round pick for one of the best running backs in the league is a little crazy. But I think you can only judge this deal by watching the Eagles, which I don't think Jay's going to get a lot of playing time for the first 4 weeks of his time there. But again, you can only really judge the deal until we really see what happens after the life after Ajayi, really. I mean, we can judge it from this standpoint. Jay was a young player. He was under the age of 25. He was still on his rookie deal. He was relatively cheap. Obviously, the personalities with Adam and Jay, they just really didn't get along. You know, were there compromises? I think, you know, people point out, well, why didn't you just bench him to make the point, and maybe he would start to shape up because he's not getting any playing time. That already happened one time in Jay's career, and it obviously didn't work. So Adam, I think, already made the compromises that he was willing to make, and I think he was getting sick and tired of it, obviously, and that was the biggest reason he got traded. But again, we can't really judge the trade until we see what this offense looks like down the line without him, and what he looks like with Philly. And until that happens, we really are in wait-and-see mode. But I can tell you this, it's really going to be interesting to see this offense without him, because I think there is a chance, and I know you probably don't want to hear this as a fan, but there is a chance the offense is better without him. When you look at Adam Gase's offense before he came to Miami and before he really found this identity with Ajayi, the offense was totally different with Adam. He was more of a pass-happy coach. They passed the football. They were a balanced team. Every other team that he's had was Chicago and Denver. Not saying that he's never liked the running game or whatever, but the passing game was the biggest part of the offense. And the running backs were a huge part of that. And ever since we've really had Jay, we haven't really seen that. And I think this really gives the offense. I think the two running backs behind him really fit the offense more than Jay did. And we were really hoping that Jay in the offseason, we were hearing reports that he was getting better, at catching the football out of the backfield. We really didn't see that translate to the field, which is weird because, in Boise State, he was a great receiving back, and he's really never translated that to the NFL. He can't really run routes well. His hands aren't great. He just doesn't look natural doing it. So the Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake factor, it's going to be very interesting to see if this offense flows a little bit better with those two in the backfield for the time being until I guess the offseason, because obviously there's a pretty good running back in the 2018 draft. We'll see what happens there, but it's going to be interesting to see life without Ajayi. All right, we're going to get into this some more. I'm sure you guys in the fan Q&A have asked a ton of questions. Right now we're going to talk about the state of the AFC East, and it is cooking right now. So right now, first place, we have the New England Patriots at 6-2. I think they're 6-2. And then the Buffalo Bills are 5-2. Then you have us at 4-3, and then you have the Jets at 3-5, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 3. I don't know. I can't remember the record. I'm pretty sure it's 3-5. But it's a very interesting division right now. The Bills are on a tear. They're on a tear right now. They're 4-0 at home. They're really looking great as a team. Over the weekend and over the trade deadline, they made a really good move to get one of the better receivers in the NFC, really, Kelvin Benjamin, who is having a great season. He's having his best season of his career. I've watched every game he's played his entire career. My brother's a huge Panthers fan, so we watch the Panthers games together. I've seen a lot of Kelvin. He's a really good receiver. He's not just a big physical guy. He really can throw his body weight around, and he can really use that to his advantage. And that's the reason he's a great route runner. He's got really good feet. He's a really good all-around number one receiver. And it's really funny because if you look at the Buffalo Bills receiver core, before the season started, it was atrocious. It was god-awful. They got rid of Sammy. Without Sammy, that receiver core, Robert Woods went to L.A. Same thing with Sammy. And they obviously drafted Zay Jones, who they thought, might be able to carry the offense. Really, that never really happened. They got Jordan Matthews from Philly. They really didn't have a number one guy. They go out and get Kelvin. Now they do have that number one guy. So Buffalo got better over the weekend. Not only did they get better, but they're 5-2. And Sean McDermott and Brandon Bain, I can't remember how he pronounce his name, but they're really trying to be Carolina. They're really trying to be the Panthers. They have a lot of their personnel on their team. When you talk about Mike Tolbert, Kelvin Benjamin, Corey Brown, players of that nature, they have a lot of Panthers on their team, and they have Ron Rivera formula. Really, it's just pound the rock, take all the pressure off your quarterback, let him feed off of that. He's not going to pass for 50 times a game. He might pass for 16 to 20 times a game is ideal. And that formula has really worked for them on offense. And then when we talk about defense, it's Leslie Frazier in that 4-3 system. We're going to rush 4 and drop everybody else back on every single down. And that has really worked for them. Not to mention, not only is Buffalo's always been... They could have a terrible team, and going up to Buffalo is very tough because they have a very, very tough home crowd. Home crowd there, and it's worked. Sean has done a great job of going down there in Buffalo, really changing the culture and playing to what their strengths are, and he's done a great job of that. And we'll see if it lasts. There's still holes on that roster. Obviously, they got rid of Marcel Darius, and there are holes on that roster. We'll see how long it lasts, if they're going to be consistent for the rest of the year. But right now, they're a powerhouse, and they are the second best team in the AFC East right now. So we got a lot of competition, and it's really going to come down to these last 2 months, November and December, to see who comes out on top. And it's going to be very, very exciting. But the Bills are going to be tough competition. To be honest with you, they're going to be tougher competition than the Patriots. Rex Ryan, the Rex Ryan factor, I think is interesting. He always gave the Dolphins, our team in general, and he faced the same team for the most part. We talk about personnel on our team. It wasn't like we drastically changed from year to year. Obviously, he was within our division for the entirety of Ryan Tannehill's tenure here. So the matchups with him were always bad because he was very, I don't know why, but going against the Rex Ryan scheme, we always struggled to go against that attacking 3-4 style defense, and they always performed well against us, especially defensively. We'll see if that continues with Sean. I don't know. We'll see. But Rex Ryan was always a bad matchup for us. We'll see what happens there and see what the matchup looks like now. Obviously, very similar personnel to last year. It's basically the same team. So, except on the defensive side, the secondary is completely different. They lost. Obviously, we don't have to go through all that. But the matchup, I think, is going to be interesting because they are a different team on defense. But offensively, they're more of the same. A little bit. Obviously, in the receiver core, they totally different team. That's why I think we'll see what the matchup is. But we've always had trouble going up to Buffalo. And just with the Bills in general and Tyrod Taylor in general, we've always had trouble with. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like now with this new regime and this new look team. When you talk about the Jets, they're basically out of it. And there's a huge Thursday night game that all Dolphins fans need to watch. Because if the Jets beat the Bills, then we have a great opportunity to take second place back. So we'll see how that works out. And hopefully we either, I think we would take second place or we would just tie for it. But either way, we need the Bills to lose. And then the Patriots. They're not the same team that they were a year ago. They're not as talented as they were a year ago, especially defensively. They're playing better than they were last year, but obviously the opponents that they're going against weren't as tough as the first few games that they played. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep this up against better teams, because I don't think that team is the same. I think their defense is it's different, obviously, but it's not the same. Losing Jamie Collins and losing Dante Hightower, that's not good. And obviously they're playing Kyle Van Noy at the outside linebacker position, really trying to use him like Dante and really move him along the defense. It's not been terrible for him. It's worked for him. But again, I think that this team, it just isn't the same. Obviously they're not as athletic up front, like I just pointed out. And I think if you can run the football on the Patriots, especially if you can break their contain on the outside, it really messes with how they call games. And I think that's anytime you have a great ground game, it's going to help your offense. And it doesn't matter what defense you play against. So if you can run the football in general, you're going to have a good day on offense. So I think that's really going to be interesting to see how they play against like a Le'Veon Bell or anybody else, really. It's going to be interesting to see. But I think that defense is not as good as it was a year ago. So this AFC East, in my opinion, is wide open. These next couple of weeks, the next 5 weeks, is going to decide who's the wild card AFC East football team, because I think there will be one. I don't know if it's going to be the Bills or it's going to be us, but there will be one, and it's going to be either the one of the two. And then the Patriots probably will win the division, but there is still time to win the division if you're the Dolphins. It's not like it's an impossible thing to do, but as a fan, I just want to get to the playoffs and make some noise. So I want to be that team, if it's the first, if we win the AFC East, or the second, to at least get into the wild card spot. But there are going to be two AFC East teams, whether that's going to be us and the Bills, us and the Patriots, or the Bills and the Patriots. Who knows what's going to happen? But these next 5 weeks is going to decide who that's going to be. And again, this is a great opportunity. If the Bills lose to the Jets, that is a window, or that's a door we have to step through, because if we don't take advantage of that, then we're just right behind the Bills again. So we have to take advantage of that. If the Bills lose, we have to win in Oakland. And even if they win, we have to win against Oakland, because we need to stay in the thick of it. If we lose, we're still in the thick of it. But we need to take advantage and get the lead back. We'll see what happens. It's not just about winning this. It's about being consistent. And there's a lot more football left to be played. We're only at the halfway point at this point. There's still a ton of football left to be played. So we got to stay consistent. Hopefully we find some sort of flow offensively, we'll see, but the AFC East right now is wide open. All right, what do we got next? Okay, we got to highlight the players. We're on the third segment. Highlight the players you need to know about on game day. So going against Oakland is very interesting. The defense is the defense. I think they're a talented bunch. They're going to make plays, so I'm not even going to talk about them. But the offense, Kenyon Drake is the guy I'm highlighting for this game. Kenyon is a big, tall, fast, strong, physical running back. He's a big dude with breakaway home run hitting speed. He can score a 99-yard touchdown and leave everybody else in the dust. He has great ability. He hasn't been able to he's not trusted by the coaching staff, which is going to be interesting to see how they use him, because I think you're probably going to see more Damian because of that. But I think Kenyon needs to be the starter and just let him go and let him play. Let him play football, because I think he's the most talented running back on the roster. I think he needs to get the starting most of the carries. And he's a super talented guy. He's a great receiving back. He has all the tools in the world you would want in a receiving back. Some people are going to draft him and convert him to a receiver. That's how good of a route runner he is, and that's how good his hands are. So he needs to be the guy for the rest of the year. He's the most talented. It's time to let him play. It's time to let him go. He hasn't had a chance to play. It's not his ability to play. Adam Gase doesn't trust him to execute the plays that are called and to do his job right. And Tannehill, Jay, and Matt really have said the same things. They really don't feel all that comfortable with him on the field that he's going to do his job right. So we'll see if there's more trust in Kenyon now that Jay is gone, and obviously that trust factor there has to be a trust factor there, because he's either going to be the number 1 or number 2 back. But he needs to be the guy, and it's time to let him go. It's time to let him to play and let him go, because we have really no choice at this point. And if you guys remember, we drafted him to be the running back. This was before Ajayi broke out as a star. We didn't know Jay was going to do that. We went out and got Arian Foster, for God's sake. So Kenyon Drake, as a 3rd-round pick, was he was eventually going to be the starter. So it's his time now. And on Sunday Night Football at Hard Rock Stadium, there's no other better time to really have a breakout performance. And he's more than capable of that. His running style and his vision are tremendous. Like, his talent level is off the charts. It's just, can he execute the plays that are called? Does Adam Gase and the coaching staff trust him enough to go out there and execute the plays that are called? And can we maximize his talent to the best of our ability as a coaching staff and as a game plan in general? Because when you talk about the Raiders, their defense is atrocious. Adam Gase is very familiar with that defense. He played it 2 times a year in the AFC West. He knows their personnel. It's most of the same personnel, to be honest with you, on defense when he was there in Denver. So he gets it. He's played Jack Del Rio. He knows what Jack Del Rio likes to do. He was with him there when he was with Denver. He practiced against Jack Del Rio's defense week in and week out. He knows what he wants in this game. So I know that the game plan is going to be really good. It's just about executing it. And I think Kenyon Drake, if he's allowed to, if we just let him go, I think he needs to be a big part of the game plan. And he can take advantage of it. When you talk about the Raiders as a defense, they're not very good. Their linebackers aren't great. They have one really good one in the middle, Navarro Bowman. Other than that, their linebackers aren't great. So that's a matchup issue right there. And I think Kenyon can really take advantage of that. Like I said, he's not this shifty back like a Reggie Bush. He can make you. He's not easily tackled, is my point. Like, he's not a power back, but he's not an easy guy to bring down. And also, he's shifty, and he's got tremendous ability in open space. And obviously, if he gets a hole, he's gone. So I'm really looking for Kenyon to take advantage of the situation. Take advantage of the fact that Jay is gone. You are the guy now. Let's see what you got, because he is talented. And we'll see what happens. But he needs to be the guy now. I'm excited to see what he's got, because I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast in the off season. I have a lot of faith in Kenyon. I thought he was going to be the lightning to Ajayi's thunder this year. It really didn't happen. But now he's the guy. And I think he has all the talent in the world. I have a ton of faith in him. I thought he looked great in preseason. The last game that we played against the Vikings, that one drive where Kenyon was the starting running back, we looked amazing. And he was running the ball great. So we'll see what happens with Kenyon. But he needs to take advantage of the opportunity here. Other players on offense, Damian Williams, obviously, for obvious reasons. I love Damian. He's a playmaker. He's a big play guy. If he gets the ball in open space, he's got this tremendous ability to make people miss, which is fun. He's got great moves in the open. He's just fun to watch. He's got great moves in the open space. He's a tough guy to bring down. He's a great runner, too. He's quick. He's a really good change. He has a unique ability to stop and go, and that's the reason why you see so many defenders miss him. And he's a fun player to watch. So Damian Williams, It's going to be interesting to see how many carries he gets. He's not as talented as Kenyon, but he's a football player, and he's a dang good one. So I'm excited to see him. Some other players, Devontae Parker. We rested him not because he couldn't play, but to really make sure we got him back healthy. So now that we're getting a healthy Devontae Parker, I want to see him ball out. We've seen it before. It's not like we haven't. He was the best receiver on the field when he was healthy this year. He was our best receiver. He was our most productive. He was our best. Now that we're getting him back, I expect nothing less from him against the Raiders. Gary and Conley is not playing. Their cornerbacks are terrible. Their defense is not good. So Devontae Parker needs to take advantage of that and play like a number one receiver in this game, and I think he will. So again, the offense. This offense is totally different. The play calling is going to be totally different. The personnel grouping is going to be totally different. This is going to be more of a Chicago Bear, Adam Gase, and Chicago Bear Denver Broncos Adam Gase offense than it is Miami Dolphins that we've seen since he's been here. You're going to see a lot more shotgun than you ever have since Adam Gase has been here. He definitely, and this is no knock on Jay, but he wasn't a good receiving. Well, it isn't, I guess, a little bit knock, but he wasn't a good receiving back. So when plays are called for the running back to come out of the backfield and make a play, we're going to see more production on first and second down because of that, and because of just different personnel. It's just more suited to Adam Gase's offense. Ajayi wasn't a great fit for his offense. He needs a back that can run the football in the outside zone scheme, which Jay was tremendous at, but he also needs his running back to be able to catch the football out of the backfield. And just I know as fans we love to talk about what the Dolphins are going to be looking for in the 2018 draft. I would not be surprised if a certain running back from Penn State was very high on our draft board because he does fit Adam Gase's offense to a T. And now that Jay's gone, he could be something. And if the offense continues to perform the way it does, if the front office is as aggressive as it was making sure the defense was right, I wouldn't be surprised if they take the same approach with the offense. And again, this upcoming draft is filled with great offensive linemen and great skill position. Well, not necessarily great skill position players, but got a lot of great QBs in there. Got some good skill position players in there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive they are towards the offense side of the football, depending on how things go, and depending on if Kenyon Drake can show up, because I still believe I think he can be a franchise running back. I don't think Kenyon can ever be the guy that touches the ball 25 times a game because he has a lot of health concerns similar to Ajayi, but he's talented enough to do that. I just don't know how long he'll last in terms of his health. But nonetheless, we'll see what happens for the rest of the season, and it's going to be interesting. But I do believe in Kenyon Drake, and I'm excited to see him play more. And I've been begging for that for this entire season. All right, so let's move on to the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A for this week. For this week. But before we get into that, we're going to get into my rookie rankings. So, Cordrea, he's gone off to some slow starts, and I think a lot of that has to do with confusion, whether that's miscommunication on the back end or he's got caught looking in the backfield. A couple of those things have happened due to the fact that teams have been able to run the football on us. So I think he's kind of struggled in that aspect, but he really corrects those mistakes as the game goes along. So he's still my number one. I still think he's having a tremendous rookie year. My number two is still Charles Harris, even though he did not have a good game against the Ravens in terms of containing the running back. He did not do great, but in terms of pressuring the quarterback, he had a pretty nice night when Joe Flacco was in there, and as well as when Ryan Mallett was in there. He's a great pass rusher. He just needs to work on being a good edge defender. And my three is still Vincent Taylor, who got a blocked field goal against Justin Tucker on Thursday night, and Devon Godchaux, who I still think is playing pretty solid as well. And he really allows us to utilize that rotation to the best of its ability. Same thing with Charles Harris as well. All right, let's get into the fan Q&A. This question comes from the Gamer12345. He says, why don't you like Mason Rudolph? He kind of reminds me of Tannehill. He is one of the favorites to win the Heisman. Mason, it's not that I don't like him. I've just seen him have a lot of bad games, and his health, he's always, his health is a huge concern for me. When you're looking at a franchise quarterback, you want to make sure he's going to be there for most of his career, for all 16 games, and you want to make sure he's going to be a consistent franchise QB. And those are the two things that I've seen in his game that worry me, that makes me wonder, do you want to invest a first or second or third round pick in him? Because there have been times he's been inconsistent, and he does not have a great injury history. So those are two things that I look at when I look at Mason Rudolph. In terms of a quarterback and his ability to throw the football, he's tremendous. But I just don't know if he can stay consistent, and can he stay healthy on the next level. But again, he's gifted. Like he can be like a very, very good quarterback on the next level. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was, because of his physical gifts. But can he stay on the football field, and can he be consistent, are two big question marks I have for Mason Rudolph. But he's a big dude, hard to bring down in the pocket. He's a big presence in the pocket. He's got one heck of an arm, and he's pretty accurate with the football. The gamer 1, 2, 3 again. Those are just minor gripes. I mean, he does have potential to be a franchise quarterback, though. The gamer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 says, what should we make? What trade should we make before the deadline? So obviously it was pre-deadline when this question was asked. I thought the trade we should have, if we had a gun to our head and we should have made a trade. To be honest with you, I didn't really care if we made a trade or not, because there were salary issues there, all that other stuff. If there was a trade that we could somehow pull off, it would have been the Dwayne Brown trade. Obviously, we don't have a ton of draft picks, and we don't have a ton of cap room, so that wasn't going to happen. And obviously the Seahawks made it. But if there was one trade I would have liked to have seen the Dolphins make, it would have been that one. The gamer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 says, should we sign Brandon Albert and put Tunsil back at no? We do it. No. I explained this in the fan Q&A. We really we need to let Laramie develop at tackle, and we need to go out and find a guard in this next offseason, and I think we're going to draft one. There's a couple really good interior offensive linemen. Depending on what happens in Notre Dame, they've got a tremendous offensive line up there, but there's a couple other prospects that look really good that are coming out in this upcoming draft that we could definitely fix that issue for 10 years if we wanted to. Antonio Hernandez says they need to drug test the whole coaching staff. I don't like Gase. A 4th-round pick for Ajayi, they're on crack. The whole staff. When the Jonathan Martin thing happened, there should have fired the head coach and some of the staff. When that coach was caught snorting cocaine, they should have fired Gase. I think Gase is on something. His eyes, they're bulging out of his head, and he acts weird. No, Adam's just mad. Adam's always mad. He's just upset about how the offense is performing. You guys got to remember, this man, before he came here, he had one of the more prolific offenses. Not only did he have the most prolific statistically offense in NFL history in Denver, but he had a pretty good offense all of his years in Denver. Very good offense, and he had a pretty okay to good offense in Chicago. He's not used to his offense is performing this way, and he's upset about it, and he doesn't understand it. So he's trying to figure it out to the best of his abilities. That's why I think you see his eyes bulge out of his head. And yeah, the 4th-round pick thing is the thing that disturbs me the most about the trade. Regardless of what happens to Ajayi in his career, and regardless to what happens to Kenyon in his career, the way Jay has played throughout his career, as of so far in his career, there's no way on this God's green earth that we can't get a 3rd-round pick, even a 3rd to 2nd-round pick for him. When you look at what the Browns were willing to give up for A.J. McCarron, who's an unproven NFL commodity, they were willing to, obviously he's a quarterback, so I guess by those standards the price goes higher, but J.J. literally you can build your offense around, and he's 24 years old. It's just hard to believe that we couldn't get like a 4th and a 5th or a 4th and a 6th, more than one draft pick for a player of his talent. That's what's disturbing about the trade. Not the fact that we traded him, but the fact that what we got for him is ridiculous. When I first saw the trade, when I first read it on the Bleacher, the team stream, and I think it was tweeted by Omar Kelly or whatever, it was like an hour before it became official. I thought it was a prank. And obviously it wasn't, but I thought we were going to get, honestly, this sounds insane, but I was like, did we trade him for Lane Johnson? Because that's how highly I hold J.J. As a player. He's truly one of the better young players in the league. And he's going to, I would assume, unless injuries plague him or some unforeseen happens to him, he's going to continue to be that. Unfortunate that he wasn't a great scheme fit. Adam had to make compromises to really utilize him to the best of his abilities and really changed his offense as a whole to use Ajayi. And I think that was a big part of the trade, and the other part was their inability to get along because of those reasons. He just doesn't fit in his offense, and I think that's where their heads clashed together a little bit. Ajayi wanted more carries. Adam wanted to run his offense. So Adam had to find a middle ground there, and the middle ground just hasn't worked for us throughout the 2017 season. And that's ultimately why he was traded. DMAC 12-15-1 says, do you think Adam Gase's play calling is predictable to the point of opposing teams already knows what's coming? Yes, because he's trying. One, he has come out and said publicly that the best players on the team aren't doing their homework. That is they're just not prepared enough to be successful on a consistent basis. I think the bigger reason was, since Adam's been here, the closest thing we've seen to an Adam Gase offense was the first few games of the 2016 season, and we didn't play terrible, but we weren't winning games on offense. I mean, we just weren't. Our defense wasn't playing well. Our offense wasn't playing great either. But that was the closest thing to it. Then when Jay came back, and we really found an identity with him, Adam changed a lot of things in the offense, and I think that really. I don't know. I just really think it's been more predictable. I think people really figured us out last year, understood what we were trying to do to NFL defenses, and it needed to change. And Adam needed to go back to what he was doing before. And he also was dealing with a running back that was complaining about some of the schematic changes, and ultimately decided that it was best for both parties to part ways. And I think now that he's gone, our offense is going to be less predictable. DMAX says, do you think the Dolphins should consider trading Leonte Carroo because it seems he doesn't fit the offense? No, he fits the offense. I think now that we're going to pass it more, you're going to see more of Leonte Carroo. He's a good pick player. He's physical. He's a great run blocker. I have a lot of faith in Leonte. He's got strong hands, but I don't think we should. If we were going to trade him, it would have happened already. But I think we're gonna hold on to the fact that he has potential to be a great player, and hopefully we see him develop for the rest of the games. He was he was really playing well in the Jets game. Not only was playing receiver is more than just catching the football. He was blocking well. He was executing pick plays at a high level, which we really haven't seen in Miami since Adam's been here. That's been a huge part of his offense. So, I like Leonte. I think he's going to start to get going at towards the end or for the rest of the season. This next question goes for D-Mac. He says, what happened to our rookie wide receiver Isaiah Ford, Drew Morgan, Stringfellow, and running back Davion Smith? They had good potential, and with the struggles of the offense, do you think the team should explore into minor tweaks into the roster and lineup changes? That's exactly what happened with Ajayi. You're going to see the games be called totally different, personnel totally different. Everything's going to be totally different. There's no going to be more back and forth with how to run the offense now that Jay's gone. So it's just going to be totally how Adam wants it to be ran, which is I think is the best for the team in general. And I think it's going to be fun to watch because Adam, I think, is still one of the better play callers in the league. So what happened to Isaiah Ford? He injured I can't remember how he injured himself. Drew Morgan is on the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. Stringfellow is a New York Jet now. He got picked up, I think, off of waiver wires. Running back Davion Smith is on the practice squad. They're just not ready. They're not ready at this point in their career. D-Max says, do you think the Dolphins should sign a veteran guard to take over the left guard spot in hopes to have a more consistent O-line? You know what? Jesse Davis has been a pretty good player for us. Whether it's going to be him or Isaac, I think that's what we should stick to. When Ted Larson comes back, exactly what you're talking about, exactly what you want, D-Mac, in terms of should a veteran guard take over the left guard spot in hopes to make more consistent O-line. That's exactly what you're going to get when Ted Larson returns for hopefully the Carolina Panthers game. Ronald says, is the week, is this the week Asiata gets his first start? Isaac Asiata, the rookie guard out of Utah. I think so. I don't think so. I think Jesse Davis is I think it's actually confirmed that Jesse Davis is going to start. I haven't seen Adam Gase's press conference yet. I'm going to have to watch that. I've read some things from it, but I don't think he ever, from what I've read, that hasn't been, like, stated. But maybe he already came out and said it. You guys have to let me know down in the comment section below. But if you want your answer for that, I would just probably just watch the press conference. Ronald says, listen, everyone, the Dolphins have no salary cap space. Yeah, this is about the trade. He's right. Even if we wanted to make if you wanted T.Y. Hilton, it wouldn't have, he has a big contract. It wouldn't have been able to happen. Let's see here. Right, we answered that in the fan Q&A video. Outdoors says, what do you think is the key to win the Oakland game, and should the Dolphins be looking for a new DB? What is the key to winning the Oakland Raiders game? Establishing an offense, whether that's the running game or the passing game, establishing some kind of offense. If we score 20 to 25 points this game, we're gonna win it. It just comes down to really establishing a passing game or running game or something. Finding the identity of this team and what this team is going to be so important in this Raider game, and hopefully it starts in the Raiders game. And hopefully whatever it is, we'll see it for the rest of the season. But that is the key, is finding an identity. Outdoor says, should the Dolphins go after it? Did not happen, Eric Ebron. Jose says, I heard rumors that Sue won't be with us next season. Your thoughts? Should we release him or trade him? Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. We went through it at the start of the video. He says, I know this question comes from Jose. He says, I know this might be a dumb question, but what is wrong with us, Gags? Can you pinpoint on something specific? I have a feeling that we would not be going through this if Tannehill was under center. It's a combination of a lot of things. It was a combination of compromises in the offense, tailoring it to either players' wants or needs. Second thing is really having to overhaul and really just dig it up what the offense was supposed to be for the 2017 season due to the fact that Tannehill's not here. All of those things I think factored in, getting used to a new QB, finding and all the stuff that happened with Ajayi that we've discussed. I think all of that really contributed to it, and I think we finally found hopefully this was the issue. I'm not saying it was all Ajayi's fault, but I think Adam Gase was listening to Jay's issues that he had with the offense, and he was being a little lenient towards some of those issues, and I think now that he's gone, Adam Gase can really open up the playbook the way he wants it to be opened up, without there being any locker room issues, without there being any bickering back and forth between him and Ajayi. So it wasn't just Ajayi's fault, it was also Adam's fault as well, and they just really couldn't find a compromise. It wasn't working. The compromise that he did put in place for the offense, we kept trying to really center the offense around Ajayi. It wasn't working, and I think that ultimately led to his release. And why some of the offense, I said that, I don't know how many times I've said that this podcast, but that ultimately led to, I think that was one of the bigger reasons why the offense wasn't functioning right. Carson Stewart says, do you think J-Train will break 1,000 yards? He's not on the team anymore. I don't know. I don't know if he will or not. The Gamer12345 says, I saw something about the Ravens trying to get Jarvis from us for Brashard Perryman and a second-round pick. What would be your thoughts on that trade? That would be one of the worst trades in Dolphins history. If we got rid of a proven Pro Bowler for a Brashard Perryman who can barely stay on an NFL field. Highlight Films says, what trade should we make before the deadline? If I had to make one, it would have been Dwayne Brown, if I had to go into my head. Axel Rivera says, Skaggs83, do you think Adam Gase should relinquish his duties as an offensive coordinator like Ben McAdoo did with the Giants? No, absolutely not. It doesn't work, especially when what you're good at is calling plays. That's his biggest asset. So taking that away is not a good idea. This question comes from 11, Adam Gase has mentioned for the second time this year that he had to simplify the offense because key players on the team are not taking their work home and not studying the offense. Is it a football IQ issue or having a young team that leans too much on their athleticism instead of zeroing in on the details? I think it was this Ajayi issue, and I think it had a lot to do with the ego and all that other stuff. But now that issue is no longer in the locker room and no longer really leaking onto an NFL field, I think hopefully that was the issue, and hopefully we can move on. The gamer 12345 says, should we get an offensive coordinator? We already have one. His name is Clyde Christensen. He doesn't call the plays, but he's a pretty dang good not head coach, but he's a pretty dang good coach himself. Has a long, successful track record. Ricky Ricardo says, the performance was disgusting. He's referring to the Ravens. People think we should draft a quarterback, and others say we should improve the O-line. Which one do you think they should improve? I think the O-line. I think we already have a franchise quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. I think he was going to have a tremendous year for his 2017 season. I thought he was going to have a great year. But it didn't end up happening, obviously, towards ACL. I think we need to draft a quarterback for insurance. And I think we need to get in a line, I think, is the biggest priority. I think the Dolphins finally have learned their mistakes in terms of their reluctancy to spend a ton of money at the guard position. And if it's not that, then draft one, because there's a lot of prospects coming up that are pretty good. But I think O-line is a priority. The Gamer12345 says, should we start a rebuild on offense depending on how they perform for the rest of the season? If they continue to be inept, I think we broke an NFL record. We have the worst offensive efficiency rating, the worst offensive statistically across the board to be a 4-3 team in NFL history. No other teams performed this way on offense and still been 4-3. You can thank Adam Gase and Matt Burke for that because they're both tremendous coaches. Let's see here. Ronnie Hill says, what's the story on Stephon Anthony? Do you think we need him? We don't need him. I think the story of what's going on, people forget we made that trade. I think the story on Stephon Anthony is he's just not ready. He doesn't know the playbook. He's a middle linebacker, so throwing him into the fire like that would be a little crazy. I think you probably, I don't know. I don't think you will see him for the rest of the season. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skagster23. We were able to answer every question. It's a wild week in the NFL. We talk about all the trades that went down, and I think this trade is ultimately for the best. Was it a great trade for us? No. Was it a good one? No. But it had to happen. I think it was a necessary evil. I think the thing that disgusts me the most is not the fact that, like I said, that he's no longer a Dolphin, but the compensation we got for him was so low. And I thought, I never thought about trading Jay, but you would think we would be able to get more for him if we shopped him around more. That's what irks me a little bit. So that is going to be it, guys. That has been your podcast for this week. Let me know what you think about the whole Ajayi situation. And I am Skags1383, and I will see you guys in the next one.